Okay, students, we are going to begin in grammar today on page 142. So we're going to be looking and reviewing again nouns of number. And yesterday we looked at these rules. That's going to be very important to you. First of all, we know the verb must agree with the subject. So there's two rules that applies to that we looked at yesterday. The first rule, it states, is that most plural subjects are easy to spot because plural nouns usually end in S. So again, the rule is when you have a plural subject, meaning more than one, usually it ends in S, not always, but usually it ends in S, you're going to have a plural verb that does not end in S, okay? The second rule is when you have a singular subject that won't end in S because it's only referring to one, then most likely you'll have a verb that will end in S. So those are the two rules that we looked at yesterday, and of course we looked at all of the examples, and we can see those for ourselves. All right, now, here's our work from yesterday, exercises that we completed. So you can go ahead and look at the screen, check your work as we go. Most of these we did in class already, just double check, okay? Just to briefly review a few things, a few of them that can be a little bit confusing. If you look at number 2, ham and eggs, notice that even though you have the conjunction and it looks like two, they are only referring to it as one dish. And since it's going to be singular in form, you're going to use the verb is, and that's number 2. Now, look at number 3, wife and mother. Are we talking about the same person who's a wife and mother? Yes. So again, it's going to be singular, and therefore you would have the verb has. Now, look at number 4, neither the coach nor the team members. Now, coach and members are not the same. They're different people, meaning it's plural, so you have to have the verb have. So again, the rule is when you have a singular subject that does not end in S, in most cases, you will have a singular verb that does end in S. When you have a plural subject that won't end in S, in most cases, you will have a plural verb that ends in S, okay? So if you remember that, that's going to, there's a few exceptions as we've looked at, but in most cases, that's going to help you be able to determine the correct verb, okay? So double check your work. Again, think A, you were to underline your subject or subjects one time, and then place the correct verb on the blank. So go ahead and check that for me. Okay, now we're going to skip on down to exercise B. Yes.
Didn't you tell us yesterday that number 8 was were?
Neither the children nor the mother.
Were?
No, because when you have the word nor, okay, so the rule is, and that's a good thing to go over, when you have the conjunctions or nor, you have to look at the word that's closest to the verb. And when you look at the word closest to the verb, mother is closest to the verb, which is singular, so therefore you have a singular verb that ends in S. So therefore, you would use the word was. But that's a good question. That's a good review too. Okay, because that's another rule that they covered with us yesterday. Okay, on Think B, they wanted you just to, take, if it was a singular subject and singular verb, they wanted you to change the sentence to make it plural and vice versa. So we did a few of these together yesterday. Were there any questions on Think B? We didn't do all of them, but we did a few of them. Okay, look down to Think C. So check your work on Think C. It says in the blank, write B if the word in dark print is a verb, or write in if the word in dark print is a noun. So notice number 1, the choir rose to begin singing. Now again, the first thing you always want to do is locate your verb first. So you know if you look at the sentence and look at the verb, who can tell me what is the verb in number 1? Okay, Noah?
Rose.
Right, rose. And rose is already bolded. So that's what they want us to determine if it's a noun or a verb. So we know that rose is a verb. Look at number 2. A copy of the first song had been given to each member. So again, what's your verb in number 2? Wyatt?
Copy.
No. Look again. Okay, Olivia?
Had been given.
Right, had been given is going to be that verb phrase. So who or what had been given, Wyatt? To find your subject. Right, copy. So copy is going to be your noun there because it's in a subject position. And then look at number 3. Please hand me a hymnal. So Eli, what's my verb in number 3? Yes, hand. And who can tell me what is my subject? Who or what hand? Kenzie?
Huh?
Who or, like, what's your subject for number 3? If you say who or what hand, because hand's your verb, so who or what hand?
Him.
Okay, so hand is your verb, right? But Olivia, what would your subject be?
Is understood you.
Right, understood you. Were you going to say that, Elias? Good. No? Oh, okay. But understood you is actually going to be your subject here because, again, this is an imperative sentence. Please hand me a hymnal. So, again, hand is your verb. We've determined that. Who or what hand? It's going to be understood you. You hand me a hymnal. Okay? All right. Now, let's turn to page 144. And let's look at the rules here where it talks about subjects and verbs must agree. Subjects and verbs must agree. So again, it's going to be similar to what we talked about yesterday. I just want to keep reinforcing it, okay? So it tells us this. It says the following information will help you make subjects and verbs agree in number. Look at the first rule. Nouns that refer to amounts are usually singular. Okay? Again, nouns that refer to amounts are usually singular. So look at some of the examples with me. Look at number 1. $4 is enough to buy a good sandwich. Well, I know we have $4, and if you look at money itself, it looks like it's $1, $1, $1, and $1. But notice, amounts, according to the rule, even if it's $4, $5, $12, $28, $2,948, whatever amount you put there, they say it's usually singular, okay? And so we would always use a singular verb. In most cases, it's going to be the word is, okay? Look at the second example. 2 hours was the time limit for swimming lessons. Again, 2 hours is considered just one swimming lesson period, and so therefore it's going to be considered singular. So you have, of course, a singular verb that in most cases ends in S, like the word is or was, okay? So that's important to keep in mind. So make sure that you know that rule. Okay, look at rule number 2. Titles of literary works, works of art, organizations, and countries are usually singular even if they are plural in form. Okay? Look at the example. The Bells is a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Now notice, if we look at our verb and then look at our subject would be the Bells, which is the title of that poem. And Bells ends in S, right? But notice it's just one poem. And even though it ends in S, they say make sure that you know it's always going to be singular. Okay? So you would say the Bells is. Okay, so any type of poetry, work of art, book, anything like that, even if it ends in S, you're still going to use a singular verb, which is. If you were to say the United States is my country, okay, states ends in S, but it's not plural. It's still, again, one country, and so therefore we would use the verb is. Yes, Noah?
Wasn't Edgar Allan Poe a horror novelist?
He was. He was actually one of the first to start writing short stories.
And
So
one of
he's
his
known for
most
that.
famous works is The Raven.
Right. That's a great poem by Edgar Allan Poe. Yes, you're right. Okay, now let's look at rule 3. The following words are usually singular, although plural in form. You have the word mathematics, civics, measles, mumps, rickets, and news. Now, unfortunately, these are words you're just going to have to memorize, because if you see them in a sentence, you're automatically going to say or think. It ends in S, it must be plural, so we need a plural verb, were or are or something like that. But no, this is the exception to the rule. Anytime you see the word mathematics, measles, mumps, news, and even the word stamina, I know that's another rule. But those are words that sometimes look plural in form, but they say will always be singular in form. Okay? So if you would say mathematics is my favorite subject. Okay? The news is disturbing today. Okay? So anything like that. So again, when you see these words, measles, mumps, news, mathematics, rickets, those are words that you're just going to have to remember. And of course, just keep in mind, measles, mumps, and rickets, just think diseases. Okay? And when you see those and they end in S, make sure you use a singular verb that ends in S. So these are the exceptions to the rule. Okay? So keep that in mind. Okay, let's look at some of these together. Seth.
What are mumps?
Mumps. It's a disease that's actually something we don't hear much about today because we take a immunization for them. When you were younger, if you had your immunizations, you would have had an immunization that's called measles, mumps, rubella, and that's a 3-in-1 immunization. So when you got that MMR, that's how they abbreviate it, That refers to measles, mumps, and rubella. And it's just a disease that has been deadly in the past, but we have the immunization, so because people have been inoculated, we don't see that much, especially in our country. There might be outbreaks in some other countries that don't have the technology, but in this country, we don't see it as much. That is, just, again, another disease that affects, I believe, joints and things like that. So, it's one of these diseases I think can be crippling and eventually deadly. So, again, these diseases that can, cause death has been something that, our technology has allowed us to be immunized against, okay? All right, now, let's look at these examples on the bottom of page 144. So it says this: underline the subject in each of the following sentences and write in the verb or contraction that agrees with its number, okay? So look at number 1 with me. There is or are many oils west in Texas and Oklahoma. Now we know our verb is going to be either is or are, but now we have to determine what's our subject. Yes, Noah?
Texas.
Okay. No, because in Texas and Oklahoma, that's going to be
Oil
a
wells.
prepositional phrase, and we can't have a subject in a prepositional phrase, but you are correct, so it's going to be oil wells. Now think about it. Is oil wells singular or plural? It is plural, right? So if you have a plural subject that ends in S, remember the rule is you're going to have a plural verb that doesn't end in S. So what verb would you use?
Or.
Yes, so go ahead and write are in the blank, please. And we're going to underline wells, okay? Now oil would be an adjective modifying wells. It's talking about what type of wells. And then, of course, we're going to place are in the blank, okay? Yes, Olivia?
So, I know you're supposed to underline wells, but oil is the adjective.
Oil is the adjective, yes. And oftentimes, because there's different types of oil wells, there's, it's telling us what type of oil well it is. But wells there would be the subject, okay? Look at number 2. The New York Times isn't or aren't delivered to our library. Now, first of all, Seth, what would be our subject?
The New York Times.
New York Times. And what verb do you believe we should use? Isn't. That's correct. And here's the reason why Seth is correct. In the rule we read earlier, again, it is the title of a newspaper, and so therefore, because it's the title of a newspaper, they say make sure you refer to it in a singular form, okay? So you would say isn't. The New York Times isn't delivered to our library. Okay, look at number 3, Little Women. Now this is the name of a book. Was or were written by Louisa May Alcott. Okay, Kenzie? Yes, good, was. And again, the rule, if you have the title of a book, it's always going to be singular, even if it looks plural in form. And you would use the singular verb that ends in S.
So we underline the name of the book.
Yes, you're going to underline Little Women and write was on the blank. That's right.
That's a good book.
It is a good book. All right, number 4. Nathan doesn't or don't know the way to the church. Okay, Kenzie?
Doesn't?
Right, doesn't. Now we look at our subject, which is what, class? Tell me.
Nothing.
Nathan, right. And so Nathan doesn't know the way.
Where do I go?
Okay, look at number 5. 36 inches is or are the width of the floor.
Door.
Or I'm sorry, yes, you're right, door. 36 inches is or are the width of the door. All right, Kenzie, I'm going to have you do this one, and then I'm going to get someone else on the next one, so go right ahead, Kenzie. Is, good, is. Now, 36 inches, we know that inches is going to be our subject, and 36 inches is just talking about one amount, okay? Because we're talking about one door, so it's going to be one amount. So therefore, we use the singular verb is according to our rules. Okay, now what I would like for you to do is go ahead and finish 6 through 10. 6 through 10. Make sure you underline your subject once, and then place the correct verb in the blank. Okay, class, once you finish page 144, I would like for you to go to page 145, and you can skip think B, or write B. You can skip that, but I want you to go down and do all 15 problems on think C, and all 5 problems on think D. Okay, so finish page 145, think C, and think D. And then have a great day.